Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Canole, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. Today, we are here for an exhibition of not just competition, but also exhibition and trial of ideas. Those of you who are longstanding Movie Battleground viewers know that back in the day, we tried all sorts of things. We once tried a teams match that went moderately well, if not just infinitely too long. We once tried a five-person debate match, which went about as well as it sounds like it could possibly go, which is not fucking at all. It went horribly. Thank God I wasn't actually there for it. Sorry, Robert Parker, you had to deal with that one. We tried a bunch of different ideas, and it's something I've always been open to trying. If somebody has an idea that I think is good, that I think is worth it, we're going to take it. We're going to try and run with it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We will see. So you don't know why you're here watching this, but you do know who you're watching it for. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'll just go ahead and bring them in. Introducing first, with a competitive in-game record of 2 wins, 3 defeats, he is Austin Pez Howell. And coming in second with a record of 7 wins, 1 defeat, and 2 knockouts, he is your champion, Mr. Henry Sanchez. Guys, welcome to the Battleground. Without saying too much, how are we feeling tonight?
Good, man. Go ahead, Henry. You champ, man.
Pez, my boy, we had an idea. We pitched it to you. You liked it. I'll let you announce what it is when we get there. But yes, it's something that worked, and yeah, you needed a match to do, and you're like, hey, you guys want that one that you guys talked about that one day, 2 days ago, technically? Yeah, okay, let's.
This idea that's really easy to do. That again, you'll say when we get there in a second. But I will say, I'm 2-3 in competitive. I'm 1-0 in exhibition. I'm undefeated in exhibition. So let's go. Let's go. I just want to throw that out there. I'm at least undefeated in one area. So, and I beat 2 people.
You were once undefeated in regular play too.
I was too.
Thank Chad for ruining that one.
Yeah.
No, so let's go ahead and get into this, guys. So what we are going to be doing tonight is a blind exhibition match. So the idea that these guys threw at me is, what if we did an exhibition match where the competitors don't get the questions ahead of time? It's completely up to me. I pick out 3 questions. I'm going to throw it at them, and they're going to have about 30 seconds to submit an answer. And unlike the blind rounds in the regular game where there's usually a cut and edit, the guys get a couple of minutes to put some arguments together.
Nope.
There's not going to be any of that tonight. These guys are going to go completely off the cuff, off the dome. They're going to try and put an argument together to win the question. So that is what we're going to be doing. The rules of the game are the exact same outside of that, same time frames. We'll trade back and forth. Whoever answers first on the question will get to go first. So with that said, yeah, there's really not much more to introduce. We do have 3 judges backstage, Zachary, Jonathan, and Chris. They will make the judgments at the end of the round. But other than that, I think we got everything out of the way except for, well, these guys don't know what the fuck they're going to debate.
And we swear on our hearts, we have not heard any of these questions, any of these topics, nothing. This is true blind round format. We don't know what's coming.
Scouts honor there.
Scouts honor.
Well, I've heard him. Can't speak for Pez. No,
cheat ass, Henry.
That's what we were doing. That's why we took so long.
He's been prepping all week. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
All right. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get into this. And for your first question, I figure there was no better question to ask in a match like this that could potentially go down as a historical epic battleground match. The question is, what is the best historical epic of all time?
Spartacus.
Okay, Spartacus. For lack of my own inability to fact check, we are talking the Kirk Douglas one.
The Kirk Douglas Stanley Kubrick film. Yes, correct.
Okay. You never know. Maybe there was a shitty remake like with Ben-Hur.
Yeah. Not that
Gladiator.
All right. So we got Spartacus. We got Gladiator. We have Russell Crowe. We have Kirk Douglas. We have Stanley Kubrick. We have Ridley Scott. All right. With that said, I will go ahead and excuse myself to the back. Judges, I hope you are prepared because shit's got to get heavy now. Austin, because you answered first, you will get to go first. So your opening minute starts and you begin speaking.
No, it's funny. Henry should say Gladiator, because Gladiator wouldn't exist without Spartacus coming, 40 years ahead of it and really setting all the precedents for what a historical epic, especially a gladiator epic set in those times, should be. It's absolutely filmed beautifully by the great Stanley Kubrick, who made some incredible films. And while this is probably his most mainstream film because he was brought in kind of last minute to fill in for this, he creates something that's truly epic, that's truly huge in scale, from the opening shots of the desert where Kirk Douglas is being held as a slave, to the great gladiator battles that are kind of held inside their training facility, and then to the big battles that are held later in the movie, with the rebellion. It's truly epic in every sense of the word, and it's one that set the precedent for everything that would come after it 40 years later, including something like Gladiator, which Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe would take directly from this film. So yes, my pick is the Stanley Kubrick film Spartacus.
All right, that's time. Henry, over to you, sir.
Yeah, so just because Gladiator came after doesn't mean that really matters, because there's something about these types of movies that, movies in general can be not only derivative but repetitive or just similar in a sense, and that doesn't have any effect that, like, for example, Star Wars is based off Hidden Fortress from Akira Kurosawa, and that's not knocking that movie for not being original or not being unique in its own way. Gladiator is one of those movies that not only do you think about this movie, do you think about Russell Crowe's performance, arguably his best performance of his entire career, got him the Oscar, and this movie won Best Picture. And it's one of those movies that when this is probably the first thing you think of. And I love how you mentioned that Stanley Kubrick came in last minute, and you actually feel that this is a movie that doesn't have the weirdness and the over epicness of in terms of grand scale that you're used from a Kubrick film. This is a movie that is actually overly long and boring, whereas Gladiator, similar in runtime, a little bit shorter, don't get me wrong, but similar in runtime, but it flies by because it has a great combination of action, character stuff with Joaquin Phoenix and all the side characters of Russell Crowe's friends, and the buildup of the slave stuff, and it has a full epic journey from start to finish.
And time. All right, Austin, back over to you.
Spartacus also has a full character journey with Kirk Douglas's Spartacus character, starting out as this slave who is kind of at his wit's end. He gets sold into this training facility to be a gladiator because he has a great physique. He's got a little determination. He's got a little rebellion in him. So he is sold off, and he ends up when he breaks out with the basically with his boys, and they start this rebellion that ends up becoming a giant army throughout the film, and really causing problems for Laurence Olivier in the film, who kind of plays like sort of the the big head government guy who's trying to shut everything down, to the point where he even kidnaps his love interest and really kind of blackmails her, and really is like doing some horrible, despicable things to her. So you get wrapped up in this love story before she's kidnapped. You get wrapped up in that. You get wrapped up in all the other characters, Charles Lawton kind of playing both sides a little bit for his own personal gain, but also kind of having this moral conflict about what he should do in the situation. But Kirk Douglas at the center of it, he has this wonderful presence about him, as he does in all the films, including the one he did before this, Paths of Glory, with Stanley Kubrick, same director. And it just shows he doesn't have to do kooky, weird stuff to make a great movie. Full Metal Jacket is not a kooky, weird movie. It's a pretty straightforward war film, exploring different morals and themes and gray areas. And same with Paths of Glory. It's doing the same thing. He doesn't have to make something like Eyes Wide Shut or something like Clockwork Orange. He can make a straightforward narrative that still is epic in scope and epic in music, and still looks great on the screen, and is still very exciting. I think the act structure is very clear. You have the stuff where he's in the training facility at the beginning of the movie, clear, great one act that ends with the breakout. You have all this other character setup as they're kind of building their army, and then you have some incredible battle sequences with some great practical effects. You don't have to rely on CGI tigers and CGI lions and whatever else is in there. It's all practical stuff where they're throwing giant balls of fire at all these people getting run over, and all these huge scale things with, thousands of people in these scenes. And it's really kind of incredible. And you don't have to rely on, just non-practical stuff. It's really great stuff from beginning to end. It's one of the best examples of a old school historical epic.
And time. All right, back over.
Yeah, so the difference between Spartacus and Gladiator, like I said, is Gladiator is one of those things that obviously time period is going to come to effect, but in terms of the actual movies itself, it's more memorable. It has more quotable lines. It's one of those things where you actually think of the epic fight stuff. You think of the scene with the tiger, regardless of whether you personally think the CJ holds up or not. People don't really talk about that as a negative, so that's definitely not a knock on the film. And it's one of those things when you think of Maximus Decimus Meridius' character, Russell Crowe's Gladiator, it's one of those things where you think of him as one of the best characters of the entire 2000s, if not the 21st century already at this point. When you think of Kirk Douglas Spartacus, you forget that he probably did it. There's a lot of people that, and it has nothing to do with the classic era of like, oh, we don't pay attention to classics. It's one of those things that when you think of a collaboration between Stanley Kubrick and Kirk Douglas, you're going to think of Paths of Glory first because it's one of those movies where it actually is straight to the point and it does its job, where Spartacus is overdrawn and you forget that Stanley Kubrick did it. And it's one of those things, if you take Kirk Douglas out of that film, he's so reserved that he's replaceable, whereas you cannot take Russell Crowe out of that film and you can replace anyone. As a matter of fact, there's only one supporting, or there's only one acting nomination in Spartacus. It was a supporting character who is Peter Ustinov, who's like a Littlefinger character if you from Game of Thrones. He's one of those characters where he's swarmy and kind of nasty, and it's all those things, and it's like you don't really care about him. But Kirk Douglas, like I say, he's replaceable. Not only did Russell Crowe win the Oscar, but you can't think of anyone else in that role. And similar with Joaquin Phoenix as the side character, but you also have Jaman Hansu, Richard Harris, and all these other side characters that they stand out and they have their own arcs and their own plot lines. When you think of the plot of Spartacus, it's one of those things where it's not very memorable in terms of like every individual plot. You spend which is ironic because you spend way too much time with a lot of them. Like you said, Charles Laughton's character with his sexy, all that stuff that he's doing behind the scenes, but it has really no bearing on the main plot. Laurence Olivier's character, he's one of the most iconic actors of all time, and he wasn't nominated as film because his character really has no depth. You don't really care about him. The arc of Spartacus in his film, you have the I am Spartacus, but that's more everyone as a group, not Spartacus as a person. But when you think of Maximus Meridius, that whole monologue that he does, that's the most memorable thing.
And time. All right, we're gonna go into 4-minute open discussion. Let's be friendly-ish.
So I'm gonna start off. Okay, sorry.
I know who I'm talking to. I just got to say the warning. All right,
it.
The cages are coming up. Time starts when you speak.
So I just want to compare the two movies with the love story and just kind of the driving force of these plot lines. Maximus' family is murdered and then he's sold into slavery because he's been betrayed. Whereas Spartacus, it's unfortunate, but he was already started off as a slave, so you don't have any character depth to him to really understand why you should care about this character. And like I said, him as a performance and from a writing perspective, he doesn't have that full depth and he doesn't have that full oomph that really stands out.
You find out about more throughout the movie as he's talking to Gene Simmons throughout the movie, as he's and not the kiss Gene Simmons the woman, but yeah, as they're talking, and you can see that he's a good guy at his core who's just had kind of a tough break in life, probably since birth, just being a slave, because he's offered this woman to basically have sex with, has his way with her because the guy likes him as a competitor, and he doesn't do it. He legitimately wants gets to know her, wants an actual romantic relationship with him. So you kind of sympathize with him that. And I want to talk about the scene you referenced, the Spartacus scene. The reason why it's not, you don't remember him saying it, is because that's not the point of the scene. The point of the scene is everybody that are so on his side and believe in him so much that they are willing to lay their lives on the line. They're willing to literally be crucified for this guy, for this rebellion, because he means so much to them.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the quote unquote most memorable part of the scene. But that's only from like a plot narrative aspect of like all these characters. But from us as an audience, we don't have that emotional impact and we don't have that care about him. Whereas, like I said, in with Maximus, his family was murdered. He was betrayed. He got sold into slavery. He was at the top and the bottom, so he had a full arc. Literally, he was top, bottom, back up to the top. But he had to really fight for it. Whereas Spartacus, he was arc at the bottom, so technically he had nothing to lose, and he just happened to.
But he's at the bottom. He gets to the top where he's literally about to win the rebellion, where they're about to overcome the thing to where everybody's scared of him and what he can do, and he's betrayed from within. He's betrayed from some of his own people. He gets betrayed by Charles Laughton, just looking for money, essentially. Like he gets sold out by like some of these guys that say they're going to help him out, and he gets sold out. So he goes from the top back down to the bottom again. For me, that's even worse than starting at the top, up, down, at that. Like when you start at the bottom and you end at the bottom, literally this movie ends with him like dying. He's dead at the end of this movie, and he has to say goodbye to his family that he's raised poison. That's incredibly heartbreaking. I don't know how you can say like you don't care about that.
Yeah, but
he's literally hanging on a thing about to die as his family walks away and he has to say goodbye to them. That's incredible.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that when you think of that type of storyline, the exact storyline is once again done again in Braveheart, but it's one of those that is more memorable because you build up that character William Wallace. You don't care about Spartacus as much as you would want. He doesn't have any depths, anything that's memorable, like I said, from a performance aspect or even from a writing thing. He's just a copy and paste. You can take Kirk Douglas or even that character, quote unquote, of Spartacus.
You could take Brad Pitt or any other number of people from the 90s.
That is not true because Brad Pitt was in Troy and no one talks about Troy. So
I love Troy. No, everybody talks about Troy.
You might like it, but no one talks about Troy. When people think of the 2000s, people think of Gladiator for a reason.
And when people think of old school heroes and old school amazing actors and guys who really stood out as like a macho, like this, a guy who's in epics, you think of Kirk Douglas. between this, and like I said, Paths of Glory.
Exactly. When I'm talking about Russell Crowe, I'm talking about Gladiator only. You're comparing these other movies that show why Kirk Douglas.
No, why he was a big star and why he was a guy that people remember and why this movie stands out among
and it's ironic that I'm bringing this up. It's not ironic because it's not the same character. It makes sense. But anyway, from Lawrence of Arabia, that character, when you think of that type of character who's going through all these things and he actually has the emotional depth that he's going through and the arc of learning, Spartacus is not doing anything where he's really learning. He's not really doing anything other than just kind of having all these people follow him along and everything. It's once again similar story with the new Planet of the Apes movies of Caesar, of how he's able to grow as this character and have all these files, but you actually care about that. And that's what differentiates that from Spartacus. Whereas in Gladiator, you're with him the entire time and you care about his storyline and the betrayal of Joaquin Phoenix. One of the reason that there's two of the most hated characters of all time, and that's Joffrey from King of Thrones and Joaquin Phoenix in this movie. We didn't prep, so don't judge me for that one. But anyway, that's the difference between this one stands out. Spartacus, it's good, it's fine.
Well, he has to learn how to be a leader. That's why you're following him, because he's kind of thrown into this position because he can handle it, because he can grow into this position, and he's learning kind of along the job. And he has those moments with Gene Simmons where he's confiding in that he doesn't know if he can do it, if he can step up and be that leader. That's why we're with him.
And time. And the character you're looking for was Commodus.
Yeah.
Commodus.
Good fact check.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have 1 minute left on the clock for each competitor. Austin, you're up first, buddy.
Yeah. The whole Oscar discussion is a wash because Spartacus won 4 Oscars, supporting role, cinematography, art direction, costume design, nominated for editing, nominated for music. So the Oscar thing is not 6 nominations for Spartacus. So I think that argument's a wash because they were both big in their time. But this movie really shows that the what you could do with a classic historical epic, what you could do with extras, what you could do with the cinematography, what you could do with these great characters, putting together these ensembles who you recognize as the character actors kind of their generations, like I said, of Charles Lawton, Peter Ustinov, Laurence Olivier, are the same as a Joaquin Phoenix or Djimon Hounsou now, like where they're like character actors who you recognize and they give great performances regardless. They always give great performances. Just to say that just because they weren't nominated for an Oscar, that's kind of silly. But this movie does everything correctly with the romantic relationships, with the government scenes are interesting. The epic battles are truly epic. You never really get that epic battle in Gladiator. Like he escapes and then he gets, and it's just kind of over. Like you never really get that true rebellion like you do in this movie.
And time. All right, and then back over to Henry. Final minute.
So to be clear, it is not a wash because not only was my movie nominated for 12, but it also won 5, but also yours was only won 4, but was only nominated for 6. But the big thing is my lead character who we're following was nominated and won for best actor, and the actual movie was nominated and won for best picture. But with that, like I said, we'll let them decide how they want to go with Oscar bait. But what I'm saying is, when you think you're trying to knock my movie and say it's not grand scale, but it's literally Gladiator about the Roman Colosseum, of everything within the Colosseum, and that's why it's not quote unquote grand on your scale. Just because you're out in a field doesn't mean it's more grand in scope. It's about the overall picture. Like you said, everything with how you had this whole audience and all these people, the pressure that this character is, and the iconic stuff with him wearing the mask and him reveal yourself. And then he finally takes it off. And then it's all that's epic in scale. The fight with the tiger, that's everything you want. The betrayal of Commodus, the death of his family, all that stuff is memorable. And that's what you think of. The fantastic score. People listen to this score on their own. They don't even have to watch the movie when they listen to the score, because everything about this movie is memorable. Spartacus is throwaway and forgettable.
And time. All right. Really good round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put both of you in the back as we bring in the judges to make the decisions. So just a couple fact check. Really, the biggest fact check was the Oscars. So Gladiator was nominated for 12 Oscars that year. It won 5 of them. Of course, the 2 big ones were Best Picture and Best Actor. It also won for costume design, sound, and visual effects. Spartacus was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. It did win 4. However, its biggest win was in Best Supporting Actor, as said, for Peter Ustinov. Why do I feel like I'm still saying that wrong? Either way, I've never said that guy's name. I'm sorry. So theoretically, Spartacus had a better success rate in terms of wins when you compare 4 of 6 to 5 of 12, but one did have higher quality wins. Say what you will about that. That's all semantics either way. And yes, for what it's worth, this was Spartacus was the only film that Stanley Kubrick did not have complete creative control over. He was brought in as a replacement for original director Anthony Mann, who was removed by the producers after the first week of shooting. Also, fun fact, the script for Spartacus was written by writer Dalton Trumbo, who at this point was blacklisted in Hollywood, and this was a movie with support from both the studio and, in fact, the President of the United States that he was allowed to write in order to stop the blacklisting against him in the Hollywood sphere. That had nothing to do with the argument, but I read it and it's fun, so I'm going to say it. Zach, I'm going to go to you. Who gets your vote?
For me, I went with Henry on this. I just felt like he really brought home the point of the character depth of starting at the top and going to the bottom for Gladiator, and then also how he brought on how Russell Crowe was not really replaceable in comparison to Kirk Douglas. So that's why I went with Henry.
Okay, Jonathan.
I'm going to say the thing with Zach. I will go to Henry because same thing as yours. For sort of like the hero's journey for Maximus throughout the movie from beginning to end. And it brings a sort of great depth to not only him, but to other characters throughout the film. And he brings like basically more complexity throughout his journey. So I would give my point to Henry.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and sit you in the back and bring the competitors back in as we will go ahead and get into question number 2. And I figure let's keep the role of first going here because this is obviously the first time we've done a match like this. Now, the bit I'm about to talk about is not the first. This question was a viewer-submitted question. So for those of you, if this happens to be your first match, welcome. What a weird one to show up on, but welcome. If you are a viewer of the show and you would like to see one of our competitors debate whether you are just a viewer, a player, or a judge, you guys can email me at officialaaroncanola@gmail.com. It's scrolling down there at the bottom. You guys can submit your question. Please be sure, especially if you are involved in the league, to include your name in the email, because if I do not know who is sending it to me, I will not use it. However, the reason that this is a first because this is actually the first time that we have had somebody who is not just a player or a judge in the league submit. They are simply just a viewer who watches the matches. They do have a connection to somebody in the league, but we have an outside person who wanted a question debated, so we are going to ask. So, courtesy of your upcoming competitor, Henry's wife, Miss Carrie Webb, the question here is, what is the scariest horror film of all time?
The 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yep.
I'm probably going to kick myself for going older again because I have a feeling people haven't seen Spartacus.
The Exorcist.
Oh, there you go. At least he's playing ball with you. If they haven't seen either of these, they're just ignoring classic film. All right, so Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the one with that's the Donald Sutherland one, right?
Yes, the Donald Sutherland one directed by Philip Kaufman.
I know my shit. I'm not bad at it.
I should go throw my shirt on. I have a shirt on of Donald Sutherland. I should go throw it on real quick, but I'm not going to. We're trying to keep it short.
All right. Well, you'll be up first for your opening minute because you submitted first, Austin. But then you will have a minute to go change your shirt, should you please. That said, time starts when you begin speaking.
So the thing that scares me the most personally, and I think is one of the scariest concepts, is not necessarily a monster or ghosts or demons or anything like that. To me, the scariest thing is paranoia horror, where you can't trust anyone around you, where the world around changes around you, and you have to face incredible odds against it, and not being able to know who is who. One of the scariest concepts you could possibly do as horror is if you wake up the next day and let's say your family members or your spouse or whoever is not the same person they woke up as the day before. That is a horrifying concept and one of the craziest things you could possibly face. And that's exactly what Donald Sutherland is facing in Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1978, directed by Philip Kaufman. He creates an incredible sense of this paranoia atmosphere that is very scary. The sound design of this movie is incredible with the music that it sets up to where you literally can't trust a single human being. You cannot trust any corner you come around, and you cannot trust even your closest family and friends. And that to me is what makes Invasion of the Body Snatchers incredibly scary, both in concept and in execution in 1978.
And time. All right, Henry, over to you.
So the concept of scariest is completely subjective. So I went with one that covers various elements of scary for various different people. Obviously, the one that stands out the most of the actual horror elements, or the Exorcist, the ones that horror elements in terms of like demons and blood and gore and gross stuff. That's scary as well. But also the fact when you think of like a family dynamic and you think of motherhood in this movie of a daughter who is going through dealing with her child completely going into being possessed by the demon, slowly just starting with getting tested and saying bad words, kind of like Tourette's and stuff like that. And then you're kind of dealing with the family dynamic in terms of until the third act finally goes out. It's one of those things where people who are very naive and ignorant say this movie is slow and boring because of the fact that this movie isn't just scary in terms of today's standards, scary all aspects of a family dynamic. And that's why The Exorcist is a scary movie of all time, because regardless of what era you're from, there's going to be a portion of this movie that is going to be completely scary to you.
And time. All right. We're going to go back over to Austin.
Yeah, again, to me, scary, can be subjective, but to me, hopelessness is one of the scariest things you could possibly face. And the face of the fact of where this movie goes, and the fact that, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler alert, but almost everybody's probably seen at least the ending shot of this movie with Donald Sutherland, the famous shot. But it's because, we lose. And that's one of the concepts that's really scary about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, is that these little parasites from space come down and take over the Earth in a matter of days. I'll steal a quote from the faculty, not blowing up the White House Independence style, but sneaking in through the back door. And that's one of the scariest things is waking up one day and nobody you can't tell if they're one of them. The fact that this movie also takes a concept that would later be sort of ripped off in Nightmare on Elm Street, where they get you while you're asleep. Which is a really scary concept because you can't even fall asleep. So it's another battle you're trying to face, not only in who you can trust and who you can't, but the fact that you're also fighting sleep, and you can only go so long for staying awake, no matter how many drugs you take and no matter how much caffeine you consume, you're not going to be able to do so. So the way that there's a sequence in this film where Donald Sutherland is pacing around, he's making frantic phone calls, and there's this thing where everybody's looking at him. Everybody keeps staring at him because they know he's still one of the normal people. And it's one of those things where if you're surrounded by those groups and you just know that there's just a sense of hopelessness and a sense of despair, that no matter what he does, you cannot win. That is a horrifying concept, a mind-melding, scary concept. And the way it's filmed with the cinematography, it's a very dark film, but not a dark in a sense of light, just a very it's just so incredibly tension-filled of they're just on the run the entire time as they learn more and more and more. It just, the creeping sense of atmosphere in this movie is what really gets it. The Exorcist, look, I mean, it's been, parodied to death. It's been, ripped off to death. I'm not going to say Exorcist is a bad movie because it's still the best example of that. But to me, that kind of stuff doesn't scare me. Just people, Reagan throwing up on people, spinning her head around, just saying off the wall crazy things. It's not really scary. It's more shocking than scary.
And time. All right, back over, Henry.
So if we're talking of the two movies of if you're trying to knock my movie for quote unquote not being scary, then that's unfortunate for you because your movie is not scary in the terms of what you're thinking of like actually scary. It might be paranoid, it might be thrilling, and it might be a scary concept, but the actual film itself is not scary because literally nothing really happens. It's all subtle and it's a drama. It's a solid movie, but it's one of those things where it doesn't do anything in terms of at any point throughout this film that is scary. Even the memeable thing at the end, the reason it's memeable is because of the fact that when you look at that, nothing is really built up to truly be scary. Well, like I said, the scary stuff in The Exorcist, it has different elements of both the family drama, but in this one, the family dynamic is the character, the mom literally going through everything and dealing with her child being tormented and going up and down on the bed. And then like I said, as soon as she gets possessed, even you mentioned the head spinning, but you also have the horrific moments of the priest and him dealing with everything with his mom and the other family dynamic, the alcoholism, the not believing in God. It really showcases that the fear in this film is so real that a priest is starting to doubt his faith because of everything that he's dealing with the demonic entities. Whereas in Invasion of Body Snatchers, it's similar to like if you think of like a CI thriller of a spy thriller like 3 Days at the Condor or something like that, where it's scary in terms of like, oh, something's happening to me, but in terms of the concept of like horror and scary movie, it really doesn't hit that. Like it's a nice tense thriller, and it does, like I said, does a good job of being a solid movie. I'm not going down to semantic and saying it doesn't classify as a horror film, because if you look it up, it's a horror film. But if we're talking about the scariest movie all time, you really shouldn't have that. Where even if you personally are knocking my film and saying that that third act doesn't really do it in terms of the cliche horror, it does it for people. Like literally, this was deemed the scariest movie of all time for the longest for that reason. It might have dropped down because, like I said, in today's eyes, it's not the Conjuring. It doesn't have jump scares and all that stuff, so it doesn't stand up in today's standard. But when you think of a 3-act structure from the beginning, middle to end, there's elements for everyone who is a horror fan who can look at this film and be like, wow, I am horrified as a parent. I can't deal with this stuff. I'm horrified as an adult dealing with my faith, or I'm just horrified as a human being seeing this actual demon come to life and come to the forefront. So it on a 3-act structure, there's something that can be scary. Whereas in your movie, it's a tense thriller at best.
And time. All right, open debate when you're ready.
It's funny because the stuff you were literally describing sounds like a religious family drama and not a horror movie. You were just talking about, oh, this family relationship drama, this priest going through a crisis of faith. That doesn't sound very scary on the surface, and it really isn't, because that's the point. Again, your movie is shocking. It's not scary. It's just going for shocks. It's going for imagery. It's going for things that don't really scare people. It's just more unnerving. It's not so much scary. My movie sets up an atmosphere, which it doesn't rely on jump scares either. That's why it's scary. What's scary is not cheap jump scares and sounds. It's just atmosphere. It's tension. It's a creeping factor that creeps up into you. And my movie has the creepy imagery as well.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Everything that with your movie of the paranoid stuff, it's done better a couple years later in The Thing. And if you would have picked that, then I'd be shaking in my boots right now, because that would be a good argument. Whereas Invasion of Body Snatchers, it's one of those things where these characters that, like you said, the scariest part of your movie is at the very end because we don't win. But that's a scary concept in terms of like The Walking Dead, of like take the zombies out of The Walking Dead and it'd be like an apocalyptic film. Then it's not really scary because it's one of those things that sometimes it happens and it's going to turn itself into an apocalyptic movie. And when you think of apocalyptic future, it's not really scary. It's just like something happens. Where in this movie, a demon really possessed and stuff, and it's a family drama in the sense of where it becomes horrifying, like a lot of everything with like The Shining, right, that we get, where it's horrifying.
The concept for yours is a very contained concept. Like, I'm not going to be scared of that something if it would have really happened, because it's just a demon possessing this one person.
That's like saying Michael Myers isn't scary because he didn't kill the entire town of Haddonfield.
But you said that mine's just kind of a spy thriller, which is not. You can't compare the two, because a spy thriller, it's a spy versus other spies. It's not the entire world is after the spy. The entire world is changing, and literally when you're the one person facing an entire world, that's a completely different concept and horrifying. That's not the same as a spy thriller where it's a contained universe where it's this spy versus this spy running around amongst everybody else.
Yeah, but if the question was what is the scariest concept of all time, then you might have me. But when you think of the actual film,
the movie itself is also terrifying. There's a scene where Donald Sutherland is falling asleep and these tentacles are creeping up his arm and I'm about to take him over, while it's also spitting out this new version of Donald Sutherland out of this pod. It's absolutely terrifying, and it's a concept again of getting you in your sleep as well. It's another thing that gets under your skin.
Yeah, but like I said, it's similar to in The Thing. Everything you're trying with the paranoia, but with the thing taking over,
it has too many. It does not have the contained characters of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Body Snatcher centers on 4 characters. The Thing has way too many characters for you.
Well,
to
yeah,
really
but you just contradicted yourself there, and you said the scariest part of this movie is the fact it's taking over the world, but this one is the contained characters. That's what's scary. But if
these characters facing the world, Henry, you're not understanding that.
Yeah, so think of it like this. This is a movie that is similar to the brand new Jurassic World Dominion, where it's like we're seeing these couple of characters deal with these pods, but we're not seeing the entire world. So you're not actually getting the horror of it because you're not seeing the true effects of this. You're seeing the paranoid from these people, but you're actually having any horrific
you definitely see the world. You see him walking around San Francisco. He sees the same people he saw earlier in the film, where the one Chinese laundromat guy is going, "That's not my wife," and a day later she's like, "Oh no, she's much better now."
Yeah, that's not scary. That's weird. That's weird. That's weird in terms
scary.
of like as a character, he's like, "Wow, that's weird," or like, "Oh no, that's different. I don't know how to handle that." Like I said, in The Exorcist, it does a thing where you have the horrific elements of the mother and the daughter. You have the horrific elements of the pastor dealing with
horrific elements. Them just conflict. Them just like having family drama. That's drama. That's not horror.
Yeah, but that's not drama. You're actually dealing with the death coming up and dealing with it. It's like one of those things when if you have a parent, the parent who's dealing with the loss of a child, and you ask another parent like, "What's the scariest thing?" Losing a child. The scariest thing is potentially losing a child, and that's what this mother's going through. So obviously, the third act, I'm not touching on as much because that's just
but
obvious.
You're also talking about a concept. That's what you would knock me for, but you're talking about a concept that people could face. Like you're talking about the same thing. You're not talking about actual scary elements in the movie. I brought up
no, because the way it's handling in the movie, you're dealing with the tears and the yelling and her actual reaction because she is scared in this movie. In your movie, it's so deadpan and everything. The reactions are not there, and it's like I said, it's a scary concept because the actual movie is not doing any of the horrific elements. In my movie, they're actually doing it. You're actually seeing the fear in her eyes and her reactions and everything that's going on in the film.
And time. All right, Austin, back over to you for the final minute of your round.
Yeah, despite what Henry wants to try to put out there, paranoia horror is horror, and it's actually scary because it's something you could relate to if you woke up the next day and your people around you were not the same people. That's scarier than a monster. I could face a monster. I could face a demon if they were coming at me. There's a thing I could face and I could deal with that. But being able to deal with something that you almost can't see and something that you almost can't deal with is really the horrifying concept here. And it's a horrifying concept and horrifying in execution. Like I said, there's scenes where Donald Sutherland sees the pods and what they're doing. That's absolutely terrifying imagery. Jeff Goldblum sees basically a half-formed version of himself kind of disintegrate and bleeding, and it's absolutely terrifying. You see the people coming after them doing the crazy stuff. Like that's scary when they're all running after them doing all that stuff. Like there's absolutely scary scenes in this thing, or there's stuff where the cab driver turns on them, and they're facing horrors around every single corner. And the way it's shot, it's terrific. The music is what adds to it. Yours has like a theme song, but it's like, okay, like it has a theme song and then not much else. Yours again is just shocking imagery. It's people throwing up on her, spinning her heads. It's not really scary.
And imagery. All right, and back over for the final minute of the round.
All right, so your movie is like the World's End from Edgar Wright of things. If they're actually not being in the way and they're not interrupting these pods, they're not actually doing any horrific things. The only reason that we're seeing these 4 characters being affected by these pods is because they're actually going against it. So the entire world, the world being taken over for, yeah, like I said, it's a scary concept, but the actual horrific elements, that's why we're not seeing the broader scope of these aliens and these pods taking over, because they're not actually doing anything horrific technically, as long as you go with it. Just like in The World's End, you don't see the actual action until they're going against it. Where in The Exorcist, it's a thing where you have the scary dynamic, the horror of dealing with a child actually going through all this stuff. You're actually witnessing this child before she even turns into the demon of dealing with this, and that is scary because you don't know what's going on, the unknown. And then when you actually start getting into the actions of the demon, it's so horrifying to see. It's one of the scariest movies of all time from history, and at one point it was the scariest movie of all time. I'm glad you brought up my score, because when you think of scary scenes, the score supplements it. Yours is so deadpan, like I said, for the entire time. It's not memorable and it doesn't really stand out, and The Thing does this concept way better.
And time. All right, another great round, guys. I'll go ahead and sit you both in the back and bring in our judges. I have some quick facts before we do some quick deliberation. So this is more so, randomly enough, both of these answers have more in common than you guys would think. For starters, both of these come from long-standing franchises. Invasion of the Body Snatchers has never had an actual sequel, but it has been remade an infinite amount of times. There was the original 56 one, the 78 one, which is considered maybe the best of the bunch, or it's close between this one and the first one, the 1993 version and the horrible 2007 version. It's also said that the 1998 Robert Rodriguez Kevin Williams film The Faculty and the 2019 movie Assimilate are also adaptations of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There is also a seventh adaptation of the book currently in development right now. Writer David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, yes, that's his actual name, the writer behind the Orphan films, the last two Conjuring sequels, and the Aquaman films, is currently working on that adaptation. The Exorcist is also a part of a franchise. It's had multiple sequels, including an original trilogy, a prequel, a pseudo sequel / remake of the prequel. Seriously, it's a whole thing. Look it up. There's technically two different versions of the same film, both of which got theatrical releases. And that's also getting a reboot, directed by David Gordon Green, the man who's been responsible for the latest Halloween films. The first one will come out next year because Blumhouse needs to pump out one of these things yearly, right? With that said, Jonathan, I'm going to go up to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the selling point?
I will go with Austin for Invasion of the Body Snatchers because he pointed out his argument that basically when he looks on the people around him is like basically not sort of feeling right along with it. And his counter of Henry's pick with The Exorcist is more like a drama than actual horror film. Is more like a humane emotion of it when you're not scared of it along with it. Where Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it really shows some more tension and fear along with it throughout the end of the last shot of the movie. So I will give my point to Austin.
All right, down to Chris.
Yeah, originally I was going to Fountain, but Henry pulled it for the closing for me. It was just like, he brought up like the scariness of the unknown right in the beginning, and then lead up to scary, but me scary, the iconic music. That was, much Austin would put it down, but I think Henry just pulled that little bit at the end for me.
All right, and then we'll go to Zach.
I went with Austin on this, and I think more because he definitely brought up the concept and execution were really well done in this movie, and how it compared to The Exorcist being more of a family drama, and that's what sold me on Austin more.
All right. Thank you guys so much, judges. I'll go ahead and put you in the back and bring back the competitors. We will go ahead and move on to the third question. And it works out that you guys both went with two horror films from the 70s, because this next question quite literally couldn't be further from two 70s horror films.
I can't wait.
The question is, what is the best musical of the 2010s?
La La Land.
La La Land is in.
Cool. Give me a minute.
No problem. Told you it couldn't be further.
Yay, Austin's favorite subject.
My favorite topic. Yay.
Ironically, I'm not a huge fan of epics, and I did good in that, so you never know.
It's only because the judges haven't seen Spartacus. Anyways.
Check
For
the
what
chat.
it's worth, two of our judges adamantly said they have seen Spartacus in the private chat. So,
All right.
And they didn't quite say it, but I know they thought it. Suck it. I could tell in the way they type that. I've seen that shit, motherfucker.
All right. Give me a second. Sorry. Hang on.
So we'll go ahead and take this time to promote the fact that next weekend, guys, September 4th, we have the next and latest title match going up. The gentleman to my left, who's had the pleasure of kicking my ass a couple of times before, will be taking on Mr. Chad Webb, who is our next contender. Once again, thank you to his wife for courtesy of the last question. Henry, while he's looking that up, what are your thoughts on Chad as an opponent coming up next week?
Yeah, he's a player that does a good job, and I'm definitely gonna have to prep for him because I know that similar to my first title match with Joe, that he likes notes and all that stuff, and similar to you with your weird shit that you write down, where it's like I never would have thought of that, and if it clicks with the judge, that hey, good for you, because I'm not gonna defend that because I don't care. So if he has some things that I didn't think of, but I'm gonna prep knowing that he's going to write some stuff down, and we'll see how I can battle
Right.
him.
I believe this counts. I saw it on several lists. I'm going to go with Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping.
It is a musical, yeah. Never Stopping. It's a very repetitive title. Lots of P's. All right, we'll go ahead and get into it. And hold up, what do you mean weird shit that I bring up? All right, just because I put together a whole box office breakdown for one question and did more research than anyone's ever done into the production of Super Mario doesn't mean that I look up weird shit.
Let's talk the plot, my guy.
I won both those questions, so clearly I did something for me.
Fair.
All right, we'll go ahead and get on to the third question, guys. I'm not editing this, by the way, unless there's some major fuck up. I'm just leaving that in. What is the best musical of the 2010s? I'll go ahead and disappear, and it'll get ready. Henry, you are up first this time.
All right, La La Land's hands down the easiest one, and the reason is because it's gotten to a point now where it's become cool to hate it, because it's like The Dark Knight, where it's like everyone loves it, so now you want to be the guy who hates it. La La Land is a fantastic film with a fantastic story of a love story, and you're in here with there another movie about Hollywood, another movie about white people, but the actual question is, what is the best musical of all time? And that's where we're getting at. So we're thinking of me and Sebastian. It's a love story. It's them dealing with their own musical adventures. One is an actress who's also dealing with her singing stuff, which you get the great star, the great song of the Paris song in her aunt, and then you have Sebastian dealing with him as a jazz pianist. And it's one of those things where when you see their stories come together and how they're able to handle it, and the way that this movie utilizes music, its opening number does a great job of showcasing just what it's like in a day of LA, and then when you're going through the entire span of these two people's lives and how they're able to interact with their city, interact with each other, interact with Hollywood, interact with acting, interact with music, interact with the business, not just of Hollywood, but also just business in general. And it's a fantastic love story, fantastic music, fantastic characters. It's the best.
And time. All right, Austin.
Well, funny we both picked a thing that kind of skewer sort of Hollywood and celebrity, because mine takes Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping and kind of takes the concept of celebrity and kind of rolls with the parody of that. A guy, Andy Samberg, who's completely obsessed with his own ego and his own celebrity, obsessed with being the biggest social media star, being the biggest guy who sells out all the arenas, who has all the #1 hits, and it's a complete skewering of all that. Much like in the previous decade with Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, this is the newest version of that, and in the 2010s where it absolutely takes it to the next level as far as more of a modern version, more of like a millennial status kind of a thing. But the music in it is really funny and incredible. Very like there's I'm So Humble, there's Hot New Single, Equal Rights, where he's trying to do political, sort of virtue signaling, but in the most ridiculous way. Finest Girl, which is the Fuck Bin Laden song, which is hilarious. So like every musical sequence they do in this movie is great. There's over the top silly, effects to go with it, and it's just a complete skewering of how absurd and full of themselves these people can be.
And time. All right, Henry.
So I'm going to use my 2 minutes to kind of go at Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping at two angles. Of one, it's one of those things where it's a niche concept of these pop stars, but also the approach of how they're doing with this type of music and the over the top of the political stuff, the satire and the goofiness, that honestly you have to kind of be a fan of the Lonely Island music to like even laugh at or laugh with them with their jokes, but you also have to like pop music to kind of be able to listen to it in general. So it's one of those things where it's a niche thing, whereas in La La Land, every music that it does, City of Stars, like I said, the Paris song, we didn't prep, so I don't know the exact titles of it, and it definitely has the different motifs that go with it throughout. You even have the one time when it's actually making fun of, similar to Pop Star but better, when Sebastian joins a band and he's going with pop and it's got the electronic stuff, but it's actually good music. But it's one of those things where it doesn't have the heart and the emotion. So it pokes fun at the concept of selling out while still having good listenable music. Whereas in Popstar, it just doesn't quite have that. And for the people that does, it's niche. So yeah, good for you for your your 1% that likes that, but it doesn't really hit for everyone. And on the other hand, it's one of those things where it how you compare it to Walk Hard, whereas Walk Hard kind of goes with Walk the Line, where it kind of does it in its own way, but Walk Hard is so good in its own right that people actually prefer that to Walk the Line. Whereas in Pop Star Never Stopping, it's one of those things where it's similar, like This Is Spinal Tap, but this Spinal Tap is brought up for ages now, and it still holds up. Whereas like I said, Pop Star, it's one of those things where it's so niche, it just doesn't have that memorable stuff. But on the contrary, the other angle I'm going at, I actually think this is a bad movie. Like I don't really like the Lonely Island stuff, everything that they're doing. Like Andy Samberg is so dislikable. And you could say, yeah, on paper, that's what he's supposed to be. But when you think of, the arc that you want for a character in Hot Rod, that's the same actor. He's dislikable because he's a jerk, but he has an arc that you eventually get on his side. In this movie, the only arc that you have on his side is the fact that, he learns a lesson. But like, you're at that point, you're so tired of it because of the niche aspect and elements of this film that you don't really, it's like being punched in the face the entire time. You're like, all right, I forgive you. It's one of those things like, because he said, I'm sorry. It's like, all right, whatever. But it's like, you don't actually truly care. And you're checked out at that point. And like I said, everything with La La Land, I've already touched on it. It's amazing.
And time. All right, back over to you, Austin.
So it's funny how you say something is niche when your movie is about jazz, which about 1% of the population, appreciates. But anyways, Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping. The whole point is that, he's supposed to be dislikable at the beginning. That's the point. Connor is one of these guys who, and it's absolutely relatable from 2016 to now, because we all have seen annoying TikTok stars or dumb, people who are YouTube stars. People who really have celebrity for no reason whatsoever, who don't really have any talent. These people who, pride themselves as singers or artists or whatever, and all they're doing is working with electronic music. They can't actually sing. Their lyrics are ridiculous. That's completely what it's skewing. We see that every day online all the time. So that's completely relatable as far as what we go through every day, what we see on social media. And that's completely what it's skewing. And the whole thing is that, yes, he does have to learn a lesson. That's the point. That's a character arc. And that's a pretty standard character arc for movies. And it does it very well because it takes the comedic aspect of he's so incredibly over topic, so incredibly stupid. And we see all the people who roll with it, but then they get tired of it to where they abandon him, and he has to realize that he himself he's become a parody of his own self, and he has to realize that. With your movie, your movie is kind of, it's doing like a Hollywood thing, but it's not that much different than like A Star Is Born and the many of those kind of things that has been done, as far as just somebody kind of getting a shot to do something out of nowhere. But it's something that's been done numerous times. We see with Ryan Gosling, he's like playing jazz in a restaurant and things like that, and with Emma Stone's character, like she's dealing with the things she deals with, the hardships of kind of coming up in Hollywood. But like, again, the Star Is Born stuff kind of talks about that a little bit better. Even Walk Hard kind of parodied that a little bit better, even though it came out beforehand. It does the same thing. Like your movie, and to me, your movie also only has like two memorable musical things: the City of Star thing, just because they beat you over the head with it about every 8 seconds in that movie, and the actual, whatever the other one we said that you said, City Lights or whatever it's called. Like, to me, the movie was a little bit overhyped. It doesn't take quite the gusto to really, I don't know. It's just, it's not as great as everybody says it is.
And time. All right. And then just for the sake of having the conversation flow smooth, is the one that you're referencing the other one that was nominated for the Oscar as well?
Yeah, the Paris song. I forgot.
Yeah, I believe it is Audition, The Fools Who Dream,
Audition,
and the John Legend one is called Start a Fire.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You guys have 4 minutes on the clock. Time starts and the first person speaks.
All right, so I just want to touch on your thing. You said only the two songs, so we've already touched about Audition and City of Stars, which obviously we got titles, but it also has the opening number of Another Day of Sun, which showcases just L.A. as itself. It has the opening number, which we haven't prepped. I don't know the song, but the first song when we see Mia at the party, that's memorable because it's her going through of her kind of going against the L.A. scene, and she's not really going into it. She's just there because she wants to be an actress, but she doesn't want to confide. She doesn't want to like bow down to the scene. And even when she gets a chance, which you just brought up, Stars Born, but like Lady Gaga's character actually does get into it, and it doesn't do that. And the only reason Ryan Gosling's character does go into the pop stuff is because the pressure of a man who needs to have a job, and it does a good job of pointing at that. Like I said, everything with Connor, for real, it's a character you just don't care about. And all these other movies that you see, these movies, they even, like, for example, like Anchorman, you have the plot lines that you brought up. You kind of have it where all these people follow him and he does the things, he has to learn all that stuff. But like Will Ferrell's character, even though he's a dick and stupid, he's actually like memorable and likable at points. Whereas in Connor Farrell, he's so unlikable. It's like bodies.
But he's unlikable in that like you feel bad for how stupid he is and how he doesn't realize how silly he is. Like, he's playing basketball and he throws the thing behind him and it completely misses, and he has the posse around him that blows him up. Oh yeah, you got it. Like, you're just like, this guy's just pathetic. But like, you can feel for somebody who's in a pathetic situation rather than like, he's not being aggressively like mean. He's not being aggressively like hateable. He's just like a pathetic guy guy who has.
That's the thing. This
an
movie is so
ego.
niche with its characters and its style that you have to be in like the mood for it. You
There's
can watch
nothing
La La
niche
Land at any point of the entire time.
people who get blown up over social media and put themselves out as like these
With the approach that it
egotistical
goes
pop
with this
stars.
way, how
There's
it's
nothing
following
niche
is
about
so
that.
over the top. It's like I said, it's like the brand new movies, Bodies, 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 of how they're making fun of the Gen Z characters, and it's so over the top and unlikable, and you don't care. You hate these characters, and if you're trying to make a point, you need to have some redeeming arcs to him. The only redeeming arc is he's not as dumb, and he's like, oh, I realize that I can't be this way. But even at that point, he's not actually changing who he is.
I feel like you're also putting this like standard where it's a silly comedy and you're trying to play it like it's supposed to be a drama like yours, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be lighthearted.
Exactly, but the question is, what is the best musical?
It is because
but your movie is a fine comedy and all that stuff that subjective is niche.
Musical.
But when you think, I'm not saying it doesn't hit the question, but when the question is what is the best musical all the time, you need to have the elements that I'm talking about with my film. Of it has characters that you love, characters that you follow, a story that you love, story that you follow, as well as fantastic music. Not only the actual musical numbers, but the musical score. It's well-rounded. Your is niche in terms of like, if some people might like the pop, some people might like the stupidity, some might like the sarcasm and the parody and the satire. But when it comes down from beginning to end, you're not really going to have that many people that love the movie as a whole.
Well, I think people do like this movie as a whole. It's actually very well loved. It's become like a cult favorite over the years because it didn't do well. It didn't become. And yours, like it made a little money, but nobody's talking about it now. That's the problem. Like people didn't think it should have won over Moonlight in the same year. That's the reason. Like there was that whole controversy. I mean, I know Moonlight won. There's a reason why Moonlight won and not La La Land. Like it was a better film. Like your movie was fine, but it was like people kind of forgot about it 6 months later, and it's like
the comparison of Moonlight and La La Land are different because they're different movies. Like when you talk about movies that you're talking about of the similar,
mine's a different movie, and you're kind of trying.
But I'm talking about like with Walk Hard.
The same as La La Land.
I'm not even comparing. I'm even fitting with the genre. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story, and this Spinal Tap, movies that do similar things way better because of no one cares about this character of Connor for real. That's what I'm trying to get to.
You're not supposed to care about him at the beginning. You're supposed to find him kind of fascinating and silly. That's why you're following him. He's doing these silly things, and it's like the same with social media. You're intrigued by what he's doing, and then you want to follow him to see what he's really all about off stage.
And that's what I'm saying. That's so niche.
That's the whole point. That's not niche. Your movie's about jazz. That's niche, bro.
No, jazz has been around for years all around. It's literally, there's a quote in the movie, the only way that these musicians were able to communicate is they all spoke different languages through jazz, through music. It's a metaphor for how it brings people together. Your movie is a metaphor of how this guy's an idiot who's trash.
Just a ground level version of American Idol. That's what that movie is with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. That's all that movie is.
All right, we have 1 minute left on the round for each competitor. Henry, you are up first.
So the question is, what is the best musical of the 2010s? And mine hands down has the best actual music, both from a score but also musical numbers. It has multiple musical numbers. Granted, we all know that Austin doesn't love musicals, so he's going to downplay it. But when you think of the masses, everyone loves. I'll say 95% of people love the music of this. Sure, like I said, it's like The Dark Knight nowadays, where it's cool to hate it. But at the end of the day, this movie is still beloved, still talked about. It's still one of the best movies of the 2010s as a whole, not just musicals, which it is the number one musical. With Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping, it's so niche because it's one of those things where it's a character that you don't really care about. You don't have this, like if you go for beat, regardless of different genres, there's a better story in La La Land because of the arc. It's relatable. The relatability of Popstar Never Stop Stopping is like, oh, he learned his lesson, all that stuff. But you can literally copy and paste out of anything. With the story of La La Land, it's one of those things where it actually showcases the different elements of a relationship, the elements of going for your dream, the elements of dealing with a relationship, the elements of being supportive of a spouse, the elements of feeding into temptation, all these different things. Whereas in Popstar Never Stopping, you just don't care about that movie because it's not a good movie.
And time. All right, and then back over to Austin for the final minute of the round.
Going after your dreams in Hollywood, that's not something that's been done 8,000 times in movies, Henry. Okay. But yeah, no, what hasn't been done is a skewering of these sort of social media pop star people who think they're incredibly talented when they aren't. That's what hasn't been done before, is going after that in a good way. You talk about this is Spinal Tap, but that was a whole glam rock thing that only, again, some people could get into that. I don't like This is Spinal Tap. That movie's boring. But this movie is not boring. It's far from boring. It's a quick 90 minutes. It's a lot of fun. Your movie's over long. It just kind of drags on and on. It's telling Gosling, the same thing. It takes forever for anything to actually really happen. Ryan Gosling just kind of ends up in the same spot where he was in the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie. And Emma Stone, like, it just kind of falls flat because she doesn't really succeed, or she goes off with John Legend or whatever. But like, you know, you're just like, okay, like, so that didn't come together. Okay, that's disappointing and silly. But as for mine, like, Connor, like, kind of gets his band back together. He has a successful career, but he's actually humble this time, and he actually kind of does have a character arc, whereas yours just kind of falls flat in the end. It doesn't really go anywhere.
And time. All right.
I'm laughing, but I can't say because it's not my turn to talk. We'll talk later.
All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back and bring in the judges for the deliberation. So just a couple of quick cleanup things. So it's funny that you guys kept mentioning in a comparison point Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, because both of these movies were produced by the same person, Judd Apatow. He was a producer on Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping, and he also sort of shadow directed Akiva Schaffer and Norma Taccone from The Lonely Island to direct the film. He was also a producer and I believe a writer on Walk Hard as well. So he was involved with both of these films. Walk Hard, for people who don't know, was actually directly based on Ray and Walk the Line, two films that came out that they used to kind of inspire their story structure. Apatow did a similar thing once again with Popstar. This movie is directly based on a handful of documentaries that came out around the time about musicians, specifically the two Justin Bieber documentaries and Katy Perry's documentary, and it's a mockumentary inspired by that. Other pop stars or real-life elements that influence the film include the fact that the boy band group was based off of a mix of NSYNC in terms of their management and how that aspect was handled, as well as the Beastie Boys, given that it's three males who are in a rap group with each other. They were also inspired by up-and-coming artists like Tyler, the Creator, who was used to inspire the character of Hunter the Hungry, played by Chris Redd, and a lot of different elements there. Kanye West was an inspiration on the character, specifically in connection to him having a famous girlfriend who was involved in a sex tape. Lots of things like that were put into the film to make fun of pop culture. The other thing that I will point out from the round is, as these guys both referenced and said, both of these films are musicals and they have incredible soundtracks. A number of the songs were mentioned here today, but I would say even if you've never seen the movies, the songs are fun. I mean, La La Land does have some great songs, and if you are a fan of comedy music, The Lonely Islands, well, they're at least better than Little Dicky, even if you don't like them. That said, I'm going to go up to Chris first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I think Henry got it for me. I think he did to what the question was, what is the best musical of 2010. So I got a little bit argumentary about the main character was likable or not, but Henry brought up the music, but the character he brought with different moments, especially with how the music relates to the movie, so Henry won it in the end for me.
All right, and then down to Zach, who gets your vote?
I also went with Henry, more because I feel like he was definitely able to criticize a lot of what Popstar was, with being a niche musical and comedy, but also he was able to bring in how La La Land, you were able to see a lot of different connections in that movie. So for me, I have to go with Henry.
All right, well, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and kick you guys out, and I'm not going to do the thing. We'll just go ahead and your winner by a score of 2-1,
I forgot it was 3 questions.
Henry Sanchez. What was that?
I said I forgot it was only 3 questions, so I was like, oh, let's get ready. My pits are starting to sweat, but this is actually a fire fight.
Yeah, no, only 3 questions. We have a winner.
Bill Carriolo will agree with you. I actually want to see. I want to see a battleground: Austin versus Bill. All 3 musical questions.
For what it's worth, I didn't know that he hated musicals, so I guess that worked out, didn't it? Unfortunately, sorry, buddy. All right, so I'll just ask you guys. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. How are you guys feeling after it?
Hey, I at least won the war. I at least won the horror question. I could take that home. So fucking A.
You won 2-0, so it makes me think of, like, technically how close, was it? But as a person who is finally confident, I can consider myself a horror fan, and I'm confident in saying that. Yeah. I'm hoping it was close, but you went with the approach of the the concept is horror. Now I'm like, fuck. I got to fight a whole concept, not just the film. All right, let's see how the judges react. They're like, no, that concept's scary as shit. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
No, I had fun. This is literally why we pitched this idea.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, 2-1. It wasn't 3-0, so it showed that or
Bro,
2-0
I've
or
seen
whatever.
La La Land once.
I saw Popstar once, so I
don't know. You know what I mean?
That movie.
It's like,
am I the only person here who's truly a fan of either of those films?
I like the movie, but it's like it was the one I could talk about maybe the most because I watched Stars Born because Henry wanted me to watch it for his thing, and I didn't like it, so like I can't pretend I like that movie. And then Greatest Showman is not good, so like I don't know, like it's just
tell me something.
Now, if you had said 2000s, I would have gone with Walk Hard because that movie's a great musical and a really funny comedy, like legit, and like I could talk more about it, but like you had to go with 2010s. It's like I don't care, and like In the Heights, which I just watched, was 2020s. So
yeah, that would have been my easiest choice, and I would have destroyed it because that movie is so good. No, I had a blast. Great job, judges, and great job, Aaron.
Henry watches that movie so much he's probably fucked to it already.
I know. Yeah.
No,
yep,
I
there
don't
we go. That's why the big dick energy comes here. Okay, that makes more sense.
Why do you think we have so much time to do all these shows? We don't fuck. That's the point.
you thought I was late to this match because I was with a girl? No, I was with a bunch of dudes
we were
online.
doing dumb trivia and stupid ranking shows and tournament fights and dumb shit online. We're just constantly.
All right, so I'm gonna pull the cane on this whole shebang. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are stuck with us. You guys enjoyed this little idea. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about it. Did you guys enjoy seeing something like this? Would you want to see more competitors go this way? Going into as we move towards the start of 2023, I'm going to be looking for potential adjustments, changes, little things here and there all over the league to kind of improve it for watcher experience, player experience, just little things. If this is more fun to you guys than, say, the themed exhibitions, whatever it may be, I'm always open to suggestions. It doesn't mean I'm going to use them, but I am open to hearing them. So don't be afraid to say something, drop it in the comments, post on the Facebook page. Thank you to Henry and Austin for being the guinea pigs and participating. Thank you to Zach, Jonathan, and Chris backstage for judging this. And on behalf of everyone here at Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll. Once again, be sure to tune in next Sunday for the title match between Mr. Henry Sanchez and Chad Webb. And until then, see you next time, guys. Thank you.